Hey guys, so today I interview Shane Hanna, who is the founder of Ready Sweat Go, and he is an expert when it comes to hydration and specific hydration testing for an individual hiker or runner. And today we dive into a few really interesting subjects around the area of hydration, and he talks through how he uses his business and the methods he uses to really make this a clear area for many of the people he works with. So I think this will be great value for many hikers listening, so let's get into it. Hey, my name is Rowan Smith and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare and conquer your upcoming hike, trek or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude, and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable, and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for. Let's get into today's episode. All right, welcome, Shane. Thanks for coming on the show, mate. Very excited to have you on board.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
So yeah, this is a super interesting subject we got here, the whole subject of hydration. We got a lot of good quality stuff to get through. But before we get into it, I'd love just mention that you are, is it the cousin of Dennis or the...
Yeah, he's my older cousin.
Yep.
So we grew up locally but didn't really interact a lot with each other in youth, I say, with a big age difference. But yeah, he's a good bloke and he loves to get out on his hikes and I love to follow what he's doing as well.
Yeah, nice one. And for anyone listening who doesn't know who Dennis was, he was on probably about 6, 7, 8 episodes ago, something like that. And he was talking about, he was one of the clients who'd been working through the Summit Strength, and he unfortunately gone through a bit of a broken ankle, and we had him on to talk through his story. And then he thought Shane might be the perfect fit for a chat. So here we are. So to get things rolling then, just to start things off, you just want to run us through who you are, where you're from, and what your background is in hiking or any other sports that you're into.
Yeah, so I'm 43 from out the Hawkesbury, and hiking and running isn't something I would say it's been a big part of my life for the majority of it. It's mainly been the last 4 years. I was quite active in my youth, basketball and athletics when I was younger, but work took over in the middle part of my life, had kids, not enough time for myself, some health problems, blood pressure, some sleep apnea was starting to rear its ugly head with me. So I sort of signed up and started to lose some weight and started to get a bit healthier, which sort of led to some other things come up with some goals I'd like to achieve. I wanted to do Kokoda, realised I wasn't fit enough, and sort of started to just say, all right, if I'm going to do it in a couple of years, let's sort of start training now. And then out of that, I sort of thought this isn't too bad. And I'm yet to do Kokoda. It was postponed from, it was meant to be in April this year. Hopefully this April I'll get to go, but we'll fingers crossed on that one. But yeah, so I sort of, as I got fitter, I started to fall in love with running because I could actually do it. And then a couple of local friends had a hiking group and I went out with them. I enjoyed that even more, having a camp out in the bush and catch up with people and sort of test myself. And as the years go on, I want to stretch myself a bit further. I did 4 days on Great North Walk this year with my brother-in-law and my friend Amy. And yeah, every trip I do, I'm thinking about the next one and want to get into it. From all that, it was mainly the Kokoda trek that sort of, they give you a lot of info on what you want to be sort of consuming with electrolytes and stuff. And that sort of, I was like, oh, great. So how much do I need? And that's where I sort of started looking into my hydration stuff and found that the information out there was pretty lacking.
Yeah, fair. And yeah, that's sort of very similar to sort of how I fell into everything in the sense that, when you get exposed to this type of thing and you go looking for answers and you can't really find, any quality answers out there, or at least there's a lot of dodgy stuff around, it sort of does give you that sort of kick in the bum. You're like, well, you know what, I'm in a position maybe to make a change here. So exactly like, we're talking about hydration today, but exactly, what do you do and where are you coming from with all of this?
Okay, so when I was looking into hydration, we were discussing with a mate of mine who's a trail runner. He was like, there's plenty of information out there about how much fuel I'm meant to eat, and there's plenty of products for it. But when it comes to like my sweat and my electrolytes, it's sort of there's a whole heap of products that cater for one group of people, which is pretty much not even average, I found out, but below average people. And it's a lot of guesswork. Drink this much, drink as much as you can, take 2 tablets, take no tablets, that sort of thing. So I started looking into a sweat. How do I find out what I sweat? So started looking online, and there's a few companies that do sweat testing. They'll send out a test kit. You put some patches on your skin, and then you got to wait, send it back in the mail, as long as you don't contaminate the sample, and then wait for a result, and then try and interpret those results into what you should be taking. I'm not. It sounded like too much hard work for me. So I was come across another group in the UK called Precision Hydration, and they do a at-rest sweat test, which involves inducing a patch of skin on your forearm with a drug called pilocarpine with a 9-volt current. We can take a sample on the spot and then run it through the analyzer on the spot, and you got your results of how much sodium per litre your sweat concentration is. And then from there we can find out if you're in the small, medium or large category of sweating. And that's on mobile, I go around Sydney, would test endurance athletes, cyclists, triathlon, trying to get into the fire brigade, things, RFS, things like people that work in hot industries. And a lot of my clients are just the people that have had cramps or headaches during their races, or just haven't finished properly, and they just want to find out what the answer is to their problems. And if I can help in that little way, that's what I try to do.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's a super, super interesting area. And it's so cool that, there's, as you said, there's so many different areas and so many different occupations and sports that I imagine would get so much value out of this type of thing and understand a little bit better. So I'm really looking forward to this chat, because I think there's going to be some real good value about to come. So getting into things then, obviously you're the man to talk to about hydration, but why is the topic of hydration, why would it be so important for hikers out there who are looking to improve their physical performance?
Well, I seem to find that even without even hydration, people just assume hiking, I'm going to walk it, it's going to be easy. I've had some people that have set off with that sort of thing in their head, and they've come unstuck. It's harder than they think. They've got load on them. Waters can be scarce out there. You've got to carry it if you can't find it along the way. And a lot of people, water's enough, they think. In most cases it could be. But if you're a heavy sweater, if you're in, and especially, we've got Australia, if you're hiking here, but, there's lots of tropical places people like to go. And if you're pumping out a couple of litres of sweat an hour, hiking, it doesn't take long for your sodium losses to start building up. Cramps, just anything, GI distress from a whole heap of issues start to come up when you're hiking. And it's just I think everyone worries about what food they're going to eat, but they rarely think about the electrolytes they're going to put back in.
And then what are, there's always these big common mistakes we'll see in every single area, but when it comes to hydration, what are some common mistakes you often see people do, with their hydration?
Well, a lot of people don't take enough. To start with, they hope there's going to be water in the places they think it's going to be, but it's not. Find that no one really carries electrolytes most of the time. I see a few people starting to think about it now, especially people I hike with. It's just making sure that they keep on top of it. And then there's always the debate of it's a personal preference, but you can have a bladder or water bottles. I'm in the middle of switching. I just find that although a bladder, you can keep on top of that, the water intake. If you have bottles, you can make sure you can mix it properly and you can get on top of it. So it's more about the mistakes I would see is people that don't drink regular enough while they're walking, and not the right amounts of stuff while they're walking. So they sort of think, I'll catch up on this later. So they push through certain bits. You want to make the hike as easy as you can. So it's best to keep everything, going as best you can during the middle of the walk, and get to camp and be able to relax and not feel too bad.
Yeah, fair. And then, in the situation where someone, they were hiking along and they were, losing a lot of water or a lot of electrolytes or whatever, and they just ignored it and they were like, look, I got a few hours to go to camp. I'll, rehydrate there. What are they running the risk of by not keeping on top of their hydration?
Well, you can have a few different issues. So if you were to be sweating a lot and you're losing, just so your person does lose a lot of sodium, and you're just guzzling water the whole way, you could end up with something called hyponatremia. It's common in a lot of endurance athletes, but if you're losing sodium and you're putting more water in than you probably should, water's got nowhere to go. So the blood, there's a fine balance of sodium and water. So when the sodium goes low and the water gets high, the body tries to get that extra water out of the bloodstream. So if it can't pass it through going to the toilet, it sort of pushes it off into other parts of the body, into different cells, your brain, other parts, the legs start to swell, and obviously your brain can swell, and that's where people get headaches and even can pass out and die from it. So that's one part of that. And then the other part is you could oversalt yourself if you are the other way around. It's just hard without knowing what people's sodium levels are. I've just gone off track there, Ron. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. And then say on that point then, like, do you feel like the sodium levels, that is something that hikers definitely need to figure out, sort of what they should be putting in while they're on the trail?
Definitely. So, but you've got to make sure, so that there's your water content. Like a lot of foods, those dehydrated meals are very high in sodium. So by the time you get to camp and you had a meal, you'd probably be topped up enough for the next day. But you don't want to wait until you're getting to camp to sort that out. So because you're losing a lot through the actual period of the day. So for 8 hours on a walk, you're losing your sodium there, and that's where you want to keep it balanced enough that you're feeling good, you're not going to the toilet a lot, and you're not also feeling very thirsty that I need water. You just want to, it needs to be a natural thing where you're feeling good about your hydration. It's not an effort. You're just doing it, and then, of course, you're keeping up on your fuel as well. And then when you get to camp, I don't think it's necessary to then say, I need to drink a whole heap of this electrolyte mix now, because just have plain water, and then if the food that's high in sodium, you can take that and you should be right for the evening and the next day.
And then there's this, there's one like specific question I very much wanted to ask you today. And, there's this approach in the hiking world, which some people do, particularly in what's like the ultralight hiking world, where people are super, super concerned about, their pack weight. And essentially, when hikers are going along the trail, they really want to limit the amount of water that they're carrying. So what they do is they do this thing that's called camelling up, which they're basically at a certain water stop. They'll stop there and they'll drink loads and loads and loads of water, like 2 or 3 or 4 liters of water, and then hike for a couple of hours to the next water stop, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and then drink again at the water stop, so they don't have to carry the water with them. With this particular approach of camelling up, what are your thoughts there?
I would say the body can't hold that extra water, because the body will naturally try and get rid of it if you've overdone it. So if you're just getting to that water source and then going, all right, I'm going to try and drink like a litre or so in one go, and then I'll be right for another few hours before I get there, I'd say you're going to run the risk of just flushing out the electrolytes that are in there. So you may end up with that clear urine, sort of, which everyone says is the ideal colour, saying you're hydrated, but you are actually flushing out those important electrolytes. So I reckon you'd be starting to dehydrate yourself before you're actually dehydrated naturally by walking and drinking normally. And so I wouldn't suggest camelling up. And once you start to dehydrate, it's harder to play catch up along the way, which, you don't want to be doing in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, fair. And then so far we sort of touched on, you've sort of mentioned a few times, getting your electrolyte balance is pretty crucial, and making sure you're getting the right hydration, staying on top of it is pretty crucial. Like, if a hiker did want to take control of their hydration and figure this out properly, what are some methods of going about this?
Well, the first thing I always suggest is to get a good idea of what your sweat rate is. So how many liters of sweat you actually lose in an intense activity. So it might be you're going for your hike for an hour, you're going for a run for an hour, do weigh in, weigh out, weigh any water you take with you and weigh it out when you get home. And then that you do breathe out some of that water, but a lot of it's lost in sweat. So you can say, I lost 1.5 kilos on that hour walk. You can say, okay, note down the temperature, humidity, everything that was done in, and say I lost 1.5 liters for that hour walk in 30-degree temperature. So build up a good data of different conditions for yourself, and then once you've got, you wouldn't want to take it more than an hour. So 45 to a minute hour activity is good enough. Don't try and do a 4-hour thing and then come and weigh yourself, because you're not going to get that much different results from just doing it for an hour and multiplying it. And then after that, I would suggest you get a sweat test done, and that's what we do, which then gives us how much sodium per litre you lose, so your concentration of that sweat. Once you get that data from your sweat test, which for someone like me is 901 milligrams per litre, I can then multiply 901 times 1.5 litres per hour, and that'll give me a good idea of my net sodium losses, and it'll also give you an idea of what type of strength electrolyte would suit you to be drinking every hour or whatever you can tolerate. So some people can tolerate 0.5 litre, 1 litre per hour. We don't advocate trying to drink more than you can, but making sure the concentration of the electrolyte in the water is matching what's leaving your body.
Okay, so a couple of follow-up questions on that then. So to start with, I know you're sort of Sydney-based, and we'll sort of get into how people could find you in a little bit. But I know there's a lot of listeners around the world who are listening to this podcast. Like, if someone was looking to get a test like that, what would they put into Google to find something in their local area?
So for us, you would put in. We go under all the socials as at ReadySweatGo.au, and readysweatgo.com.au is my website, and all our details to contact us and book a sweat test are there. I travel a good range. I'd go from anywhere within 1 to 2 hours to do a test, but we do group bookings, so we can arrange that with people. So we can also go to Precision Hydration and find a test centre in any of the capital cities around the world, but in particular Australia. There's centres in Perth, there's me in Sydney and Gold Coast, and I think there's one in Adelaide as well at the moment.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Well, I'll leave links for all of that down in the show notes below if someone does want to find either of those. But we'll dive into Ready Sweat Go in a little bit, and then you were mentioning sort of once you sort of got those numbers, then you would figure out sort of what electrolytes you need. Is that a case of you'd go down to the shops and you'd sort of look at the back of the electrolyte supplement and do a few bit of maths there and figuring it out? Or is there a particular process you'd recommend to match your electrolyte intake to what you actually need?
So once we do a sweat test with someone, we work out a plan for them. It's pretty much generated on the information they give us about how they train, which would give us an estimate of their sweat rate. But we prefer people to do their data, which can be done before or after. But then we match that with the actual the milligrams per litre that you've lost, and then we can match you up with the right electrolyte. So Precision Hydration, they have 3 strengths. There's 500, 1,000 and 1,500. So 1,500 is reserved for the most saltiest of sweaters out there that lose a lot of sodium, but it's also our preload strength electrolyte. So the 2 or 3 hours before your event or your hike or the morning of gives you enough time to take the water and the high concentrate of sodium, and then give you enough time to go to the toilet. But what the extra sodium in that does is water is attracted by the sodium, so it'll help you hold onto the water just that little bit longer at the start before you start really getting into it and start losing it, and therefore you can then start topping up on whatever strength we recommend for your sodium loss.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's a pretty straightforward service in the sense that you book in, you get tested, and you just get clear direction on exactly what you need to do. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of if you're someone like me, which I find in the 900 is the average, you'd need to be taking double the amount of off-the-shelf products that are usually out there. And then by doing that, you're messing with the mix, because you've got to add more tablets than are recommended to that solution of water. So you start getting thicker solutions, which then cause your gut to actually work a bit harder to process it and get into your bloodstream. So all the precision stuff is it's mixed with 500 mils of water, and it makes it a hypertonic solution, which makes it quicker for the stomach to get through the stomach lining and into the bloodstream where you need it.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. That's really cool to know. Okay, so I feel like we've covered some good points around this hydration stuff today, and it's definitely given a lot of food for thought here in regards to this topic. Like, obviously the world of hydration is probably a really, really big subject, and we've only really brushed on it today. But on top of everything that we've talked about today, is there anything else you sort of would like to add, or anything else you wanted to talk about today?
No, I don't think so, Rowan. I think we pretty much nailed most of that. I'd just suggest that if you're going to be pushing yourself to the limit, I wouldn't leave anything to chance and try and guess what your sodium losses are or what you need to put in there, because over dosing yourself is just as bad as underdoing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, then. So, to wrap things up then today, like you mentioned a little bit earlier before, but I'd love just tell us a little bit more about your business with your hydration and your Ready Sweat Go, and just tell us, what you do, where you're based, and then how can people find you online if they wanted to check out what you did or potentially get in contact with you.
Yeah, we're fully mobile. My sweat testing kit comes in a little bag, and we can pick it up and move it wherever we need to. It just needs a bit of power. I have all the inducement and electrolyte equipment here. We come to you, we sit down and have a chat with you, talk about how you're training or what particular event you're about to do, if you've had any problems in the past. And then this is all happening while you sit there at rest and not really sweating, which a lot of people come with their expect me to come and run them around the block a few times, get them to sweat. But I say, no, just sit down. So we sit down and just chat, and they says, is that it? And we say, that's it. They've got their sodium, and it doesn't change. Once we test you, it doesn't really change over their lifetime, maybe a few points either side, but it's genetically determined, the sodium loss, because it's to do with the cystic fibrosis reabsorption glands in your skin. So they're all different between people, and that's why everyone's sodium losses are different. So we can pinpoint what your sodium loss is and your concentration, and then work it out from there. And we've got testimonials on our website. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as at Ready Sweat Go AU, and the website, as I said before, is readysweatgo.com.au, and see some pictures of our sweat testing, how it works, and there's numbers and emails to give me a ring and see if we can organise a sweat test if you think you need it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'll pop all those links in the show notes below. So if anyone did want to check, get in contact with Shane or check him out, you can find all the links in the show notes below, and you can have a look through all that. But thank you so much for coming on today, Shane. I think it's been a really interesting episode, and it's it's a cool subject which we haven't really dove into before in this podcast. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on, particularly in this crazy busy time of year. It's been a great chat, and thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me.